A very warm welcome to Week Ahead. My name is Asanda Magaqa. Coming up on the show, Katlego Bereng's father believes his son was kidnapped and murdered. ANC-NEC grapples with governance issues as it explores possibilities of coalitions. As South Africa commemorates 29 years of democracy next week, we examine the quality of freedoms. The father of the charred body found in the cell of now jailed fugitive Thabo Bester will be traveling to the Free State this week. He says he believes his son was kidnapped and murdered. His body was found in the cell Bester was in after he escaped.
It is shocking. You know, we still even don't believe that this is happening. It's like we are shooting a movie, something that is not real. Especially knowing the character of my son. He was a friendly boy who liked to go out with friends, who loved soccer so much, who loved social media so much, who loved to create friends, new friends. But now to find ourselves in this situation, it is shocking. Yesterday, we were told that he collapsed in town. Then the ambulance was called. He was taken to hospital. When he got there, it was found that he's lacking blood. He passed on, and then he was sent to a mortuary. But I don't believe that. That is not the truth. What I believe that first my son was kidnapped, kept somewhere, then at later stage killed, and still kept somewhere again before they transfer him to the prison for that fake, and then that's when they burned him. He was already dead long ago, and it was a planned thing by these people.
Earlier this morning, Bereng's mother, who's inconsolable, spoke exclusively to the SABC's Gomogelo Sekoi and said they looked for her son without success.
Since re batlana le ene o na ntse le mo gae go sena madula o na dula le mamaka a gona mana ya teng na dula mo gae so ke mo batlile ga tsamaye go fitile kgwedi ya May, March, April. May ka ga tsamaya ke ya go police station kopano ke tla ke ba botsisa for ngwana o latlhegile. Then ka bula case ya missing. Ha ke bula case ya missing, it was the 17 tsa May. Be ke boela gape ka di 18 tsa May ba sa fetsa o nthusa ka di 18 tsa May ke ya ka photo tsa gagwe. Be ke bula case, then after case ka bo June ka re ya go government mo sha re bona this thing ka tle go serious ka tle go atlhagelela re mo grey.
As she's explaining, Naledi, that they started realizing in May that Katlego was missing. She then went to the police station, the local police station here, to report him missing, because it had already been 2 months at the time that he was not coming home. And then around May, they went to government mortuary to go and look for his body. But at the time, they didn't find anything. And then it was only later on that the news came out. I want to speak to her again further, just to understand what unfolded beyond that time when they went to the government mortuary. Until we got to this point now where they know that their son was actually involved in this matter that of aiding Thabo Bester to escape from prison. Mama, motlhomong re bolelle gore ha le fetsa go tswa go government mortuary le setse le bone le ikgotsofaditse le lona gore ha ayo Katlego mo go iragetseng le ntse le tshela yang le ntse le mo batla kae gape
before ke ile le go dispetlele pele nominationale re sa mo kry so since ntse re mo batla ene le mo TV nga ntse re sheba di news re ipotsa batho ba bolailwe ke ipotsa gore motho ke butseng case mo yena ha a tle mo nna a tlo mplelela for rena o diragalang case e ntse tsa mabya so ha se bi atle next o tlile ka holiday ya this year holiday ne le ka March I think ne le Tuesday holiday a tla tlo mpotsana a ke ke kry Katlego so ntse ke sheba le ko TV then taba ya besta ke be ke ipotsa ke re magbodi eo a se ngwana ka go sentse ke batla ngwana ke di body ntse tse 3 e ka be ngwana ke hayo mo because a kutlwe next o tswa le poniseng le ke butseng case mo lo
she's explaining that whenever there was a case that appears on television of a murder, the family would wonder if this is Katlego. Whenever there's any news coming up, they would just question whether the body is Katlego. They also wondered when the Thabo Bester story broke whether the 3 bodies that were said to have been involved or taken from the government mortuary did not include the son, Katlego. She's also explaining that the police officer who was investigating this matter, the missing person matter, had not come to the family to update the family about what was happening. He only came to them in March this year on the public holiday human rights that to ask them whether they had found their son. But I also want to find out from her again what then happened when the police officer asked whether you had found your son, Mama. Ha le ponisa le tla motlu le tla go le botsa gore le bone Katlego ene le hane go iragetseng ka nako e o nana le information e nngwe o na tlile fela go tla go le botsa
first go tlile le ponisa le ne ke butse case ko lona ka March le ka holiday then beke ele itileng last week Friday wa tla le ponisa ba tlontsa di DNA test ka ba botsa di DNA test tse tselentse tsona hona le something na e leng for le suspect ana le kreile body ya ngwanake a ba re kreile fela ditopo so ditopo ntse re checka ditopo so a se stopo se one sense re check ntse re bona le batho le bona ba llang ka ditopo tsa bona so ntse re ba dira di DNA test so that's why le wena re tlo ira di DNA test because of le wena o butse case against ngwana gago la tlile so last week happy Friday se sengwe se fitile ke ga le ponesa le lata ko mmerekong di tlhale re monna ke tle le lona mo Yesu then be ke re a ke tle ke chaise ke tla o emela ko toropong be ba tla maponesa go nna toropong re ya ko office ya bona ba itla ba re go tlo kwa di sa maina gago a feleletse ke be ke ba butsisa di question why le abari ke le ponesa le leng o rile ke colonel ha isale o le ke butsing case ke bona ba tshwereng case yaka then Saturday it was Friday Saturday be ba ya konna ba itla ba ntse ba tlo ntira di DNA test tseo tsa faila last week Tuesday ke ga o tla wa Pretoria wa di forensic a tlo ntira di DNA test tse dingwe ke ga a di boa o ntirile tsona Tuesday this Friday ke ga a tla le ponisa lo anlatela gape go mmerekong a itla a re monna ke tlo lata re go hen ke bere a ke gone go tsamaya le lena papa go sa le mpolelele bothata ke eng ka ngwana ke le mokrile gore a ba re tla go nkgo le batla go mamaka so nna ke tlile after then ke khone ke tla utlwa gore di DNA test tseo di a tshwana le ngwana ke but up to so far ha ka kreya pampire mpontshang for di DNA test tseo di result di reng aka di bona so ba re ke gone ke tla di bona Monday
ba lebleletse leng sentle gore mmele o ba buang ka one kwa ga Katlego ne letsatsi le feng
ba boleletse mama ka Friday
okay she's explaining there that initially when the police came to her regarding the DNA testing they didn't disclose to her that they were actually testing her DNA against that of someone that they suspected was her son. They only told her that because she had reported a missing person to the police, that they wanted to test the DNA because other people had also reported their people missing. And on the basis of that, she then gave them a sample, a DNA sample. This DNA sample came back and it was not a match. But later on, a police officer from Pretoria arrived and took a DNA sample again from her. And last week, Friday, they were then informed that the body that was found in Thabo Besta's cell 35 at the Mangaung Correctional Center was that of their son. I want to take the conversation to the aunt, who is the younger sister to the mother, for her to just talk to us about how the family is reacting to the news that their son was actually used and how they feel that he got involved in this matter. Auswaka ke kopa ganyane fela o re tseye le mo batlile Katlego for almost the whole of 2022 ha le tla go utlwa dikgantse le ne le ikutlwa yang?
Nna ke ile ilaba peini ho nna mobane Katlego ne ntse ke nahana hore ne ke sena believe ya go Katlego o shwele ne ke dula ke kgothatsa mme wa hae le nkgono wa ka le mme wa ka hore Katlego mo leng teng o hantle o tla hlaha ne ke sa lebella le hore Katlego ho tla thwe ke yena a fungwaneng nthong prison ne ke sa idumele ho ha ne ke sa idumele because ne ntse ke na le hope ya hore o tla hlaha ka le leng la matsatsi.
The aunt there explaining that she had hope. She believed that he would come back. The family did explain earlier that he would once in a while go see his friends, go visit his friends, but he would always return. He would always return home. And even in this instance, they had hoped that he will come back. But as the mother has already said that she was worried, and every time she saw a murder case being reported on the news around Bloemfontein, she would worry about whether that person is her son or not. Mama, ke tlo bua le wena gape ke utlwa gore wena maikutlo a gago ka se tlhagileng ha o tla go utlwa dikgang tsa gore ngwana ga go kene a dirisitsweng mmele wa gagwe go no dirisitsweng mo go thuseng Thabo Bester gore a sie go tronkong maikutlo ga go keng
I ka sia matutsa ke botlhoko tsatele ke botlhoko.
Grief-stricken, a mother who cannot understand or accept what happened to her son. As you know, we've been reporting on this matter about a body that was discovered charred, burnt in cell 35 at the Mangaung Correctional Service, a body that was used as a decoy to aid Thabo Bester to escape. For the whole year of 2022, the family looking for their son, going to the government mortuary, going to the hospitals around here, just looking for their son, not knowing that even at the government mortuary where they went, their son was there, but they couldn't identify him.
On that sorrowful note, that is where we pause for now. The week ahead continues after this break. Welcome back. On Thursday, the 27th of April, South Africa will commemorate 29 years of democracy. So much has changed and more still has to be done. 2 years ago, an international publication rightly said we tend to think of freedom as an emancipatory ideal. It added that throughout history, the desire to be free inspired countless marginalized groups to challenge the rule of political and economic elites. For a discussion on 29 years of democracy in Mzansi Africa, we are joined by Professor Simphiwe Sesanti, and he is with the Faculty of Education. Good afternoon, Professor. Is the South Africa we live in today reflective of the freedoms envisioned 29 years ago at the dawn of democracy?
Good afternoon to you, ma'am, and thanks for having me, and greetings to all your viewers at home. Thank you very much for your very enlightening opening statement, making reference to those who are marginalized and those who are the elites. And so, in line and following in line with what you were saying, that it needs to be remembered in this country that even though it was a few who gave the direction and the light in terms of raising the consciousness of our conditions in our country, the burden of liberation was with the vast majority of the oppressed masses. In other words, it was the masses who liberated this country to the extent that it has. And I'm saying to the extent that it has because, it is to a particular extent that this is the case, in the sense that there is no explicit and random, perhaps, brutalization of our people. But in many respects, the truth of the matter is that those who are benefiting and those who are enjoying whatever we have are the few who are elites. The majority of the masses who brought about, in fact, who themselves liberated the very elites that are benefiting, continue to be on the receiving end, continue to be what Frantz Fanon refers to as the wretched of the earth.
Now, if you are 29 years old in this country today and you are asked to celebrate Freedom Day, would you?
Certainly not, because, the voices of our young people are very strong in this regard, in the sense that you just simply talking to those who have been fortunate to obtain some, qualification certificates. They tell the story of continuing to be on the margins, saying that, when they are poor mothers and fathers, their poor families sacrificed the little that they had in order to enable their children to go to school, to go to varsities, so that they may have a better life. That for them continues to be an illusion. So the young people of our country, and that's why sometimes they articulate some misguided notions, thinking perhaps that everyone who's an elder has, lost the vision, but they are articulating a view of despondence and frustration, a deep sense of disappointment with their leaders, saying that, they have not done anything that is meaningful to them, that they are only free in name. Because, as it were, one of the things, significant things that were stated by one of the greatest revolutionary philosophers, Amilcar Cabral, told us that the masses of our people are not struggling for concepts, for ideas, being told about democracy or being told about freedom. Our people are struggling for concrete material changes. And so when they do not see these concrete material changes in their lives, so whatever they are being told is simply meaningless.
Let's ponder the quality of state of being in general for all who live here. The housing situation is one of the major indicators of the vast level of inequality. Has government done enough?
The government itself, states, it tells us that the representatives of the government, they tell us that, they have serious backlogs. In fact, they tell us, whether this is through corruption or otherwise, that, the qualities of the houses that have been built, for those that have received them are not, up to a standard. And I guess that when we're speaking to houses and all that, we are also going to refer to buildings, such as schools. We would look at the schools, especially or particularly those of Black people. They leave much to be desired, and we would see, that we read on the from news and we listen. We hear that our children in the rural areas and in the townships are being exposed to toilets that endanger their lives. And in fact, a number of children who live in Black areas have found themselves, drowning in feces in those kinds of conditions. And we are being told that some of our children continue to be studying under trees 29 years after this. And we know that the children of those who afford are experiencing and having great privileges. And it is perhaps those amongst us who tell us from time to time that liberation is not about employment but deployment. But we know that in their case, those that have been deployed are also employed because they receive monies that enable them and their children and their families to live very comfortable lives, whilst the majority of the poor continue to be on the receiving end.
A considerable number of the majority of this country still suffer from lack of access to basic rights like water, electricity. Has politics gotten in the way of service delivery?
Certainly, there is no doubt about it. You will see, let us begin by saying that, those who have claimed to lead us have, demonstrated the fact of the matter, that being that they were basically leading their own stomachs. And that, in fact, their politics are informed by their own stomachs. It is for this reason that we see our leaders being highly corrupt. And, just this morning, I was thinking about an incident that had taken place in KwaZulu. And we were told that the masses of our people who were angry and hungry had gone on looting. And yet, and this is when the term looting conjures up particular images in our minds that are accompanied by violence, wanton violence, and all of that. But the truth of the matter, those of us who grew up on the music of Peter Tosh remember that Peter Tosh sang a particular song, Equal Rights, and this song was, everybody's crying about crime, but tell me who are the real criminals. And so in this case, the people who are depicted as the looters are the masses of our people who had gone on, grabbing and all of that. But the truth of the matter, the looters in our country are the politicians who are corrupt, who are taking away. And when they take away from the poor, they are perpetrating violence against the poor. And so that, therefore, the reason that perhaps even those, who are the poor, are simply following in the footsteps of our politicians, though our politicians are being looters and violent in a sophisticated way, and the majority of the poor are doing this in a less sophisticated way. And so our attention then is being drawn. And so we use beautiful words such as corruption and all of that when we are referring to our politicians and looters to the masses of our people, whereas, there is no difference between the two.
That is where we're going to leave it for now, Professor. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you for hosting me.
South Africa is firmly established as one of the leading scientific countries in the field of infectious diseases in the wake of the global pandemic. To this end, the Center for Epidemic Response and Innovation at Stellenbosch University is partnering with a global healthcare leader. As part of the Abbott Pandemic Defense Coalition, diseases that progress faster as a result of climate change will be tracked.
South Africa was thrust into the global spotlight after the identification of the Omicron variant of the COVID-19 pandemic. The country was punished severely by being placed on the red list for travel bans. But since then, experts at the forefront of this work say the lessons learned must be that divulging information cannot be viewed as negative, and that the discovery of a disease is not bad news.
When we quick characterize the Omicron variant of concern, they decide to close South Africa. And we highlighted then that would be absolutely ineffective. Not only that, they end up not preparing enough. And the Omicron wave in South Africa was very small, and since then we didn't have a deadly wave of infection, but Omicron spread everywhere in the world. So the world learned that punishing a country for discovering a pathogen do not stop the pathogen spreading, and can do the opposite, can avoid new pathogens to be discovered.
Joining the Abbott Pandemic Defence Coalition, South Africa will once more play a vital role in the possible prevention of future diseases. The focus of the coalition is on diseases that might occur as a result of climate change in places where it was not expected.
No one institution can do this work alone. We need the expertise of everyone in the group. And so when one site sees something, everyone can help respond. They're not alone, and we're working together. During COVID, we got to see how impactful that was. When people were sharing information and helping each other, we were able to make a difference and be able to launch tests faster, develop vaccines faster. And so my hope is this will continue.
At over 1.2 billion rand, the new state-of-the-art Biomedical Research Institute of the University of Stellenbosch has some of the most advanced equipment and technology in the world. Housed in the facility is the Centre for Epidemic Response and Innovation's new genomics facility. Here, world leaders in scientific research can detect and help formulate rapid responses to emerging diseases. Currently, work is done, among others, on tuberculosis and the identification and understanding of yet unknown viruses.
South Africa has access to the best scientific technology in the world. That was not a short process, that took 20 years of investment, and that now we can partner with the world to be a scientific leader in the field. And this scientific leadership is important to prevent the next pandemic, which we think that we are one of the best countries in the world to teach the world how to do that.
This work on possible future threats as a result of climate change will become increasingly important in a rapidly changing world. Mariska Botha, SABC News, Cape Town.
It's day 3 of the 4-day ANC-NEC meeting, which aims to deal with a number of key issues affecting the country. The gathering has also been used as an opportunity to refine some of the resolutions taken at the 55th National Conference in December. Samkele Maseko, SABC News reporter, is in Boksburg. While the governing party ponders coalition possibilities, Samkelo says that the SACP will present a paper pushing for a reconfiguration of the alliance.
The SACP has been pushing for a reconfigured alliance and saying that they can only contest alongside the African National Congress in next year's general elections if there is a reconfigured alliance, a threat that the SACP continuously makes to the liberation movement and to the governing party. They once contested in Metsi Mahulu and quickly backtracked from contesting in that local government election back in 2016. Subsequent to that, in 2021, they no longer contested. So you can imagine that the likes of Madoda Sambata, who is the MEC of Health in the Northwest Province, the likes of Bonagale Machuba, the MEC of Education in Mpumalanga, and also Jacob Mamabulu, the MEC of Transport, the MEC of Finance in Gauteng, how they would be eyeing those particular discussions in the SACP. The likes of Bladen Zemande, who are in cabinet, the likes of Tulasizwe Nxisi, who are also in cabinet, having to go it alone and giving up those cushy government jobs that come with them being in alliance with the African National Congress. So I don't see the SACP contesting any election anytime soon at a national level. They will be presenting that particular document of a reconfigured alliance, which the NEC will then mull over and then get back to the South African Communist Party.
President Ramaphosa has rebuffed suggestions of a split in the energy cluster. Samgela, is there a sense of synergy among the three ministers in charge?
An alignment when it comes to Minister Pravin Gordhan, Minister Gwede Mantashe, and Mr. Dr. Kgosientsho Ramokgopa, knowing very well that there is that internal silent war going on within the African National Congress when it comes to the just transition of South Africa's energy trajectory. When you look at those like Barbara Creasy who are pushing for renewable energy, solar energy, and pushing for independent power producers, then you've got the likes of Gwede Mantashe, who's perceived as a fossil fuel dinosaur. Just on Friday, he was opening a new shaft of coal in Mpumalanga, in a coal mine in that particular coal belt of the province, Mpumalanga, saying that coal is here to stay for a very long time. So the debate on the just transition is raging within the African National Congress, and the likes of Gwede Mantashe, who like having power of influencing those who are in charge, particularly the incumbent head of state, will not let the battle of coal die down anytime soon. You've also had the Minister of Electricity, Dr. Kgosientsho Ramokgopa, who is pretty much seemingly aligned to the vision and to the perspective of Gwede Mantashe when it comes to the issue of continuing with the base load of coal. But the main thrust and the main bone of contention is the powers of the Minister of Electricity, because for him to be able to do his job, he needs certain powers to be taken away from Minister Mantashe and also Minister of Public Enterprises, Pravin Gordhan, whom the President says the Minister of Public Enterprises' role is squarely to look at the business function and the unbundling of the power utility in breaking it up into three different divisions to make it a viable business, which is distribution, transmission, and generation, which the Minister of Public Enterprises has yet to come to the South African public and the nation to say that they have fully and effectively unbundled Eskom. The Minister is also seized with finding a new chief executive officer or group chief executive officer of the power utility Eskom after the resignation of Andre Director, or well, he may have been fired as well, knowing that the agreement that was there for him to leave earlier on was then agreed upon after that explosive interview he had in revealing that certain politicians and high people were wanting to eat and illegally at the power utility. Then you've got Gwede Mantashe, that the President says that the role of the Department of Mineral Resources and Energy is that of a regulatory basis, and the role of the Minister of Electricity, Dr. Kgosientsho Ramokgopa, is to make sure that there is energy generation, which effectively gives the Minister of Electricity control of all of the coal-powered fleet in South Africa, all 84 generating units of Eskom through their coal belts. You've heard him yesterday speaking about the open gas turbines that he is going to be servicing and ramping up in order to be a short-term 0 to 6 month solution in burning diesel to make sure that there is energy efficiency and energy distribution to the South African population and to the business fraternity to make sure that the economy is not grouted to an end.
Samgele, the party will also thrash out issues of the possibility of Russian President Vladimir Putin for the BRICS summit and whether or not they are keeping their promises to the electorate.
Politicians can speak all they want. We were once promised by one former president that he will now go back and report to the nation that there will never ever be load shedding ever again. Load shedding came back. Fikile Mbalula, politician, secretary general of the ANC, not an engineer, not a technocrat, not a bureaucrat, came out and said they would want load shedding to be ended within a year. In the interview we had, that exclusive with Dr. Kgosientsho Ramokgopa, he said he will not lie to the South African nation. He will not lie to the people. He will not put timelines on when they will eradicate load shedding. Yesterday, he went back on his word, but he deviated and differed with the ANC Secretary General Fikile Mbalula, who said load shedding would be a thing of the end by the end of the year. Kgosientsho Ramokgopa, a civil engineer by profession, a person who deals with the issues of technical equipment, being honest with the nation, saying that they will not eradicate load shedding before the end of the year. So That's the problem in South Africa. Politicians tend to put timelines, yet they don't do the job. It's the technocrats who do the job, whom speak less, but politicians speak more, with politicians knowing less of what is actually the problem with fixing some of the problems that the power utility faces. The NSC will also mull over the upcoming BRICS summit. You heard Hage Geingob, the president of SWAPO and president of Namibia, criticizing South Africa for still being a signatory and being part of the Rome Statute of the International Criminal Court, saying that Africa has sufficient courts. And why does it look like whenever there is a problem, South Africa is being set up to arrest sitting presidents of other countries? A similar situation happened when former President Jacob Zuma was still at the helm of the country, when there was a warrant of arrest out against former Sudanese President Omar al-Bashir. The same time around this time, President Vladimir Putin is scheduled to arrive in the country for the BRICS summit in August. The ICC issues out a warrant of arrest for President Vladimir Putin, putting South Africa's international relations and diplomatic relations with other countries at risk, knowing the relationship South Africa has with a fellow BRICS nation, which is Russia, which is one of the two dominant forces in the BRICS establishment with the Republic of China.
Electricity Minister Dr. Kgosientsho Ramokgopa has unveiled his plan to add 12,000 megawatts to the grid in a bid to end load shedding. The plan will include purchasing 30 billion rands worth of diesel for emergency use.
Since taking office about 2 months ago, Electricity Minister Kgosientsho Ramokgopa has been on a fact-finding mission at the country's power stations. This has culminated in a detailed short to long-term plan of action to address South Africa's energy crisis. This plan was taken to the ANC's National Executive Committee that is meeting this weekend. He has proposed a 6-month winter plan that includes the fixing of open-cycle gas turbines, a ramped-up procurement of diesel, and the addressing of the load capacity factor.
What we know about the diesel situation is that in the 18% tariff increase that NERSA has granted to Eskom, the Eskom is building 8 billion rands to procure diesel. And then we know that in terms of the fiscal relief that the Minister of Finance has provided to Eskom, there's an additional 22 billion rands that the Eskom has made available for the procurement of diesel. So the point we're making there is that we have, as I speak to you, confirmed about 30 billion rands that is available for diesel procurement.
There is also a 6 to 18 months plan that will see units from some of the utilities' power plants coming back online and power stations rehabilitated.
So first is that the Kusile Unit 1, 2, 3 that had failed as a result of the flue gas desulfurization challenges that led to the structural integrity of the chimney at Kusile. We removed about 2,100 megawatts. So we know that in terms of our timelines, that 3 of these units are going to come on stream. They are going to come on stream late this year. The last of the 3 units is going to come on stream by the 24th of December. The first one will come in November. So we know now that by Christmas Eve, we'll have an additional 2,100 megawatts from Kusile. And then there's an additional unit that was not fired, essentially is going to be commissioned, and this unit will come in February of next year. So that's another 700 megawatts of that will be installed at Kusile.
The plan is to see about 4,500 megawatts saved in 6 months. A generator has also been procured from the Netherlands to help revive Medupi. They also want to get an additional 1,000 megawatts from Mozambique once agreements are signed. Katlego Logodi, SABC News, Boksburg.
The week ahead continues after this ad break. Thank you for staying with us. Sunday, the 30th of April, marks the 12-year observation of International Jazz Day. The day was officially declared in November 2011 by the United Nations Educational, Scientific and Cultural Organization. International Jazz Day is the culmination of Jazz Appreciation Month, which draws public attention to jazz and its extraordinary heritage throughout April. For more on this, we're now joined by veteran broadcaster and jazz aficionado Ike Patla. Good afternoon, Ike, and welcome to the week ahead. This is the 12th year of the International Jazz Day. Talk to me about the relevance of this day and its diplomatic role of uniting people in all corners of the globe.
Good afternoon to you, Asanda, and it's good to have you back on the airwaves. I think it was appropriate that UNESCO went about and declared the day that it should be celebrated. We know that jazz is the genesis of every art, of every genre of music, and it has united a number of people. And we know that jazz in its form has also played a role when it comes to some historical events that happen throughout the globe. So I think it was appropriate for UNESCO to declare it that the whole world should celebrate World Jazz Day.
Why is it important to recognize and observe this kind of day and these kinds of commemorative days in general, especially when we zoom into its heritage globally?
Jazz is one of the most marginalized art forms, if you look at it in terms of the airplay that it's supposed to play, in terms of its historical place when it comes to music. We know that individuals are the ones that are elevated far above the art form itself. We recall the names like Nina Simone, Cole Porter, and many others. But the art form itself, when it comes to prominence, when it comes to airtime, for instance, we find there's limited airtime for the art form. But it is an art form that unites quite a number of people from different continents. Let's take, for instance, when we came back into the Global Forum in the 90s, the first groups that came through to South Africa to collaborate with our musicians were the Scandinavians. It was also North America and most of Europe. It still happens even today that most of our musicians are recognized throughout the globe, but sadly, we don't recognize them that much here in the country and don't celebrate them enough. So it is the glue that unites quite a number of people from different walks of life, whether it's the art practitioners themselves, or even listeners or appreciators of the art form, and even audiences where the jazz is being performed.
Let's now bring it closer to home. How important is it for us to document South African jazz?
I think it's very important. When you go to schools, music schools, whether it's a tertiary level or formation level, most of our students, they study American jazz. And the reason being that we don't have quite a lot of South African songbooks and scores that they can study from. We don't have documentaries on them that are very telling, that will tell the story of an individual from where they began, what attracted them to the art form, and where they are today. And our youngsters need to learn from those that have walked the road before them. And I think it's very crucial and very important for us to document. I have been fortunate to be given the privilege to document some South African artists. And it was great to see how it was received at some tertiary schools where we distributed their scores. Those scores are still being performed today. And the names of those people that I was able to document, Ngenekaya Mahlangu, who is a veteran saxophonist, Andile Yanana, who is a pianist and a teacher, Fezile Fayafaku, an international icon, and a trumpeter who is also a composer. And their music and the score books that we have printed from those projects have gone a long way to introducing South African youngsters to our own songbooks. And it was also great that during the arrangements of their music and the recording of their documentaries, they also used young musicians so that they can still continue to give them more education and mentor them in the process.
And what is the jazz landscape in South Africa looking like right now? Are we seeing more artists embrace and participate in this genre, particularly the young, as the genre is widely viewed as a genre for older people?
One of the things that I miss the most, Asanda, is to play South African jazz because it's very exciting, it's very vibrant. When you look at the vocal side, we have quite a number of young and exciting vocalists who are up and coming. If you go to some of the jazz clubs where they perform, you just wonder, when are we going to give these youngsters that platform for them to express themselves more and to influence the genre? You look at people like the pianist Dr. Nduduzo Makhathini, who is embarking on a European tour. He's a young person. He joined when he was very young, and today he is recognized globally for the way that he carries himself and the way that he supports South African music. And he does mix quite a lot of African spirituality songs together with modern jazz versions, and people have embraced him the way that he is. So I'm very excited about the South African jazz scene because we have quite a lot of youngsters that are coming up. And contrary to popular belief, it's about all ages, not only older people.
South Africa marks the 29th year since the liberation of the country from white rule. Jazz played an incredible role in how it became protest music in the townships, addressing issues regarding police brutality, segregation, and injustice. Talk us through that.
It was the voice of the people, wasn't it? And very appropriate. And some of the musicians paid the ultimate price because they were banished. You look at Miriam Makeba, she was away for quite a long time. Brahim Masekela, Kefa Semenya, Abdullah Ibrahim, as well as the late Brajeji Jonas Kwangwa. And it was the voice of the people at the time. And I think we still need that voice to come back because even after 29 years, we do have challenges. We do need to be inspired. We do need people that have that platform to express themselves as they observe the communities they live within, as they observe the nation that they live within.
Braik, always a pleasure interacting with you. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Talking us through the International Jazz Day and, of course, following the month of April being recognized globally as Jazz Month. The 67 Blankets for Nelson Mandela Day initiative has kicked off with a kaleidoscope of color in the mother city as an annual drive for people to knit or make blankets for those in need. This year, the theme of local is lekker inspired some spectacular works of art. The display of beautiful blankets is the start of an 8-city tour across the country ahead of Mandela Day in July.
The so-called nitwits for Madiba have been hard at work giving their imagination free rein. With wool, thread and needles, the numerous knitting clubs and circles of Cape Town took this year's theme of Local is Lekker to new heights. The FG Low Busy Bees Knitting Club from Hanover Park made an entire rugby pitch, including a 15-man rugby team, all by hand. The iconic red bus that takes sightseers on a tour of the mother city is proudly displayed, and Table Mountain in all its glory is crocheted into a massive work of art. All this while still knitting squares and blankets that will be donated to those in need. To date, over 167,000 blankets have been made and distributed in the organization's 9-year existence.
It's amazing how a simple idea, a ball of wool and a crochet hook, can snowball into what people are calling a movement for good, a movement for change in our world.
It's hoped that organizations and companies will come forward to make use of the artworks. The organizers would like to see the Table Mountain piece, for example, on display at the Table Mountain Aerial Cableway. This, in turn, could help to further grow the 67 Blankets movement.
We are a cash-free zone, so we're always asking people, please donate some wool to us. Please donate to our beautiful works of art. And so, yeah, and Red Bus, I would like the Red Bus to be displayed prime position at the waterfront, hypothetically. So yes, come on guys, get on board, contact us. We've got a very active website, so there's no excuse not to know where to come and contact us. And having these works of art on display and making the circle bigger.
The aim of the continuous project is for people to come together to knit, quilt and crochet blankets just before the winter for those in dire need.
Madiba believed that if he could just change or touch one person's life every day, he could change the world. And we know if we look back at history, that's exactly what he did, what he achieved. So we can also make a small difference. I mean, we are all despondent at the moment, but you know what, when you reach out to someone else through an initiative like this, just stitching, just keep yourself busy, keep your mind busy, just do good for others, you can bring about that change as well.
The next stop on the countrywide tour is Mossel Bay. Mariska Botha, SABC News, Cape Town.
And that is where we leave it for this week. Until next time, have a blessed week and take care.